Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week, bit of an update and a quick tour of the shed. See you in a minute. Hi, just a quick bit of information before you see this video and probably the next couple. If you missed it on the Cycle Cart channel, which you may well have done, I've been in hospital for the last fortnight on a drip of antibiotics because my leg went absolutely huge within about 3 hours, and I ended up being admitted to hospital a couple of weeks ago, and I've been there ever since. So I've just got out today. There are 2 or 3 videos set up which we'll run through, but unfortunately after that there will again be a bit of a gap. Once again, as I said on the Cycle Cart channel, it's not through lack of interest or anything like that, purely and simply through not being very well, and I want to make sure I get well and truly better before I start kicking on with some of these projects that are in the shed. So I hope you'll bear with me. I look forward to seeing you when I do the next videos. I'll see you then. So there's a couple of things to talk about this week before I get into a short tour of the shed. Somebody suggested about, I think it was 18 months, nearly 2 years ago, that I did a tour of the shed, and I did start to make a video on that, and at the time it was a bit of a tip, and it's been a bit of a tip ever since. I've come back to this on several occasions and ended up with not getting anywhere. And as I alluded to on a couple of videos back, probably a bit long ago than that, I was getting snowed under, and that was a sort of a symptom of it. Too many things taken on. My usual problem, too many projects half started and not finished, and that was the whole point of this channel, to get that under control. And unfortunately it ran away with me again. And in many cases I think one of the problems was the channel itself. I had subtly got into the situation where I was doing what I thought I would never do, and that was chasing content rather than filming what I did. So whenever a project came along that looked interesting, I thought, oh, that'd make a good video, and off I'd go with that. And as a result I got into the stage where, as I say, a few months ago, I just was completely paralysed with too much stuff on and not getting anywhere. Touch wood, I think that's sorted. I've gradually, slowly got through everything now, got it under control. I think it's taken a few weeks, but we've finished them off one at a time. It's like eating an elephant, just one bite at a time. You get there. The Morrison's bench has been delivered to them and is fitted. The club railway lifting flap is now fitted and working, touch wood. There are still a few bits and pieces to do on it, but that's an evolving thing that I can do when I'm going over on a Thursday night. It's not in the shed, it's not causing a problem. What else have I got on? The patio outside is done, thankfully, before winter has started to set in, or autumn anyway. So that's all been done and out of the way. The garden's all bedded down pretty much for the autumn and winter, so I've got less going on out there. The cycle cart has run, and I've had about 2 months not doing anything on that, while I've been catching up on all the other things that got put to one side while it was getting itself ready for its first run. So in that sense, I think I'm in quite a happy place. I have taken the opportunity of doing less videos to relax a bit more. I'm getting to the point now where it doesn't feel wrong. This is after 10 years of being retired. It doesn't feel wrong to sit down in a chair in an afternoon and read a book or something like that. That's something that hasn't happened so far, and it was still felt wrong that I wasn't doing something. But as a result, I think I'm feeling a lot less stressed about life in general, and I've taken the opportunity, because there's no pressure to get something done, of taking the shed apart, cleaning it, tidying it, rearranging it for, I don't know, this is version 17.1 or something, I don't know. It's a constantly evolving thing, but I think it's working quite well at the moment, and it's relatively uncluttered. So this was the time to finally get round to that shed tour, which was scheduled to have been done 18 months ago, and is now in a stage where I think at last I can actually bring you in to have a look round and see what's in here. And there is quite a lot of stuff in here, but there's also an awful lot more room than there has been for months, if not years. So let's come in from the start, if you like, through the door, see what you see, and we'll go through everything that's in here. So the first thing that greets me nowadays is a huge area of floor, which I've not had for a long time. There was a lot of stuff in the corner here, and the pillar drill was by the wall there, and that was causing quite a lot of chaos, because it meant I wasn't so easily able to get the drawers open to get at stuff in there. So that's the first major change that's taken place, that I am having to fight at the moment not to fill it with bits of wood. I've got some quite nice hardwood that I'm working with at the moment, and hopefully that will all be out the way soon, but that is one of the problems, that whenever you get a space, stuff will fill it. But all the clamps are accessible still now, or probably more accessible than they ever were, so they're all sited in the corner there. This cupboard that I got it I think from the railway club, because it was not any use for anything there. It had been donated, I think, or left. It's fine for screwdrivers and things, but I'm finding that it's quite difficult with some of these things, like the rasps and that, to find what you want, because it's just sort of thrown in there. So long term, it would be nice to get something a little bit more organised. But at the moment, at least I can find a chisel or a screwdriver or my drills. They're all together there. And it's fair to say that most of, not all of, but most of the chisels are now sharp. I've had a few sessions of sharpening those. I've still yet to do a video on the scary sharp stuff that I've got, because I haven't yet got around to sorting it and getting it running. But we'll do that one day soon. There are a pair of chisels that are the same, pair of planes that are the same, that I want to sharpen, one normally and one with the scary sharp, and see if I can tell the difference. But so that's all there. Got some squares at the top. All my old manuals that blokes never read are up in the corner, but I have got them if they're needed. And the big clamps are on the wall with the Festool rails behind them, and that has worked pretty much since day one. That has been untouched, all of that effort, all that corner there. Camera stuff is all up there. That's the various cameras and batteries and chargers and spares, things like that are up there. They all live in that shelf, and again, that's worked reasonably well and hasn't had to be altered. Plain storage and little tool wall. One of the problems I've got in here is that there isn't enough wall space, and I've got more tools to put up there than I've got space for. I've got a couple of the little hand block planes, which are lovely things to have, but I've probably got room for one there. I might get one in the corner, I don't know. Still got to do a little bit of work on that, but I am struggling for space for a couple of hammers and things like that, squares. They get left on the bench, and that clogs things up a bit, but by and large that has worked well as well. One of the biggest things that I've found is that, I know it's old hat, but the discipline of putting things away after you've used them, something I've never done before, is really proving to be ideal. The MFT workbench is still there and working well. If I were to start doing this all over again, I wouldn't have one. I would have a workbench with a few dog holes in, because there is a fairly large problem of stuff going through those holes onto everything underneath, and I've crammed that many bits and pieces in that they get covered in sawdust and things like that. But otherwise it's all fine, and wedging it into the corner effectively has stopped it wobbling about too much. So that's there. All my main metal rules are in there in the slots on the end, and they're always accessible. Charging station has worked well, and being reasonably good at keeping my range of power tools to 1 or 2 battery platforms has helped. There's the old Guild stuff which I take out if I'm going out, and the Ryobi stuff I'm using in the shed. Using those, using the camera batteries, nothing's had to be added to that, and again that's worked well pretty much ever since I put it in. Underneath the workbench I've crammed as much as I can in. I put in this rolling rack which will come out, the whole thing will slide out on casters, but putting the double-sized drawer runners in to give me access to the boxes has proved to be ideal. And you can see now that moving that corner unit with the drill away has meant that I can now get access to these as well at the back. That's the old power planer, and there's all sorts of things in there. So that's working well, and has worked well again pretty much ever since we put them in. I took one of the small drawers out so I could get the bigger Festool box in, but that's again worked well. I've always got screws available whenever I need them, and I can get at my Ryobi stuff. It's all in the one drawer there, or most of it is. Could really do with another box. Recent change, I've moved the vacuum from over there to here. I've taken the bandsaw out from underneath the miter saw and put the vacuum in. Now the vacuum was one of the first things that I had to alter. I put in a dust extraction system, and to be perfectly honest, it didn't really work very well. So I'm now basically using a very long flexible hose that's hooked up on there, and whenever I want to use the vacuum I just press that, and that's good enough for me. That will connect. I've got the adapters to most of the tools that I'm using, and that seems to work okay in a small space like this. Miter saws work reasonably well with the shroud on it, but it is still an awfully messy beast, there's no doubt about that. In the corner there used to be a lathe. Now that's not a permanent move, but it has gone over to Meninshed's shed at the moment because they're doing a few wood turning courses, and I took the opportunity to have a bit of a rejig. I use it that little that it was taking up a lot of space on top there, that is better served by putting the bandsaw and the pillar drill there, which I can just lift across to the bench whenever I want them. Planer thicknesser underneath it, and when the lathe comes back it will go underneath on one of those shelves somewhere. I've rejigged when I took the vacuum out and put a couple more of the Makita stack boxes in, and that's given me, that was again the base to the pillar drill, so that has stacked better by putting them side by side. And this whole lot, like all of these units, they're all on casters. They can be moved round, and it means the whole place is much more flexible, and having this extra space here now means it's much easier to get, for instance, that out and move it, or that out and move it, whereas before I'd filled all the gaps and I couldn't really move anything. The elephant in the room is there, which you saw I hope the other week. That's the 3D printer that is at the moment blocking up the router table come circular saw table. But again, now because I can move that out, I can get at it much more easily. I've given away my scroll saw because I've used it once since I bought it 5 years ago. I've also going to give away the pillar drill because I don't need it, but it's still down there. It's not in the way at the moment. But again, that is not a permanent fixture. That will be going into the house. It's just that at the moment it is something that I'm running long prints, and it's not the sort of thing you want running at night in the house because you can hear it. However good and quiet it is, there are fans running. That in itself has given me a problem because however little power it's using, it's getting off, because there's a bed there which is heated to 60 degrees at the moment, and that's like having a hot plate in the shed. So even on a day like today, we're up at, I don't know what the temperature in here is, but it's almost uncomfortable. So it is something I'm going to have to do something about long term. Let's see if I can get the temperature up. Yeah, there we are. It's 26.2 in here. So that is basically the cause caused by that, because it's only about 18 outside, and because the shed is so well insulated, this thing running 24 hours a day is causing a certain amount of problem with heat, but hopefully that's short term. I will mention while it's there the little dust monitor which we've got in here, which is proved invaluable on several occasions. It catches you out every now and again. You realise that you're doing something which you thought was relatively clean and tidy, like the laser engraving, and it was putting up horrendous amounts of small particles into the atmosphere that you couldn't even see. So that's been invaluable. It was a well spent 30 or 40 quid when I bought it. The cupboard I made is now got more or less consumables in it, a couple of torches, the bench power supply unit, bits of odd ironmongery and stuff, protective coverings, things like that. That's in there. But as you can see, there is very, very little wall room left. Sanding station works well. I'm happy with that, and that has also proved a useful thing to have. By now, the slatted wall stuff I used in lieu of putting in French cleats has pretty much all been covered up. So although that was a good idea, it's not something I can really get a great deal of use out of because I haven't got any wall left. And I hate to say it, but it may be that the first casualty of that is going to be the sticker wall, because there's a lot of wall space there that's not being used effectively. The camera sits there most of the time and is useful, and again that takes up a huge amount of work. Up in the top I've got paints, consumables, spare screws, pocket hole jigs, hole drill jigs and things. They go off round behind the air extractor. The filter probably wants changing on the little air extractor there, but it's surprising how much that pulls out. It's basically only a kitchen fan, but it pulls an awful lot of dust and dirt out the air when I'm doing stuff. And then over the other side is the timber store, which again wants a good dust, and hopefully if I get a few more projects going on, we will be able to knock that down a bit. So what would I change? Well, other than making it bigger, which I can't do, not a lot I don't think. The LED lights are brilliant. The double skinned ceiling with the 40mm of insulation in it is absolutely great. I've not had any issues at all in here with damp or condensation or anything like that. The only 2 or 3 times I think I may well have had a couple of spots of water on the floor down there, and what that has been caused by is having an open vented ridge up there, which I have now stuffed in some insulation, but that was getting hot air going up and meeting the tin cover to it up on the top when it was cold, and it condensed on that and dripped down. That's happened on 2 or 3 occasions I think in 5 years, and I think I've stopped it now by blocking it up, but of course it means the ventilation has gone. But the actual material is the way to go towards putting a roof on a shed, because it's a single panel, 1 metre wide, that you don't have to do anything. It's self-finished on both sides, so that was very good. The slat wall panels, as I say, probably were a bit of a waste of time, because in time I've filled the wall up with other things. The MFT bench, as I say, I would do differently. I would build a separate bench now and just put a couple or 3 dog holes in, because it's useful to have the dog holes with the right angles and all that sort of thing in it. But the big fold down Festool track and all that lot that came with it are currently sitting in drawers and all over the place, not being used, because there's no real need. It's such a small space that I can't do a lot with it. And I have, as I've mentioned before, put in an awful lot of storage in tiny little corners. Every space I can find, I'll put something in, however little it's used. You can see the problem with going through with stuff coming through the bench. But there are fridge containers in there with all pens and pencils, knives. All the sharpening station is in there, and there are some sheet materials vertically behind all of this lot that gives me a little bit of storage space there. So that's pretty much it, I think. And as you can see, there are, at the moment, I'm just trying to see how many projects I've got on the go in here, because normally it's half a dozen, and there are 2. There's that one which I'm sure nobody will, there'll be extra points if anyone could guess what that was. That's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and there is a case on the floor which is something I'm bought for model railway use, and again that's something we'll be looking at in the future. But other than that, and a couple of bits of repairs that are here for men in shed stuff, some planer blades, we're pretty much under control. As I said before, we're back in a situation where I can work on one project at a time. I've got room to do it, and I can find all my tools. So that's the inside of the shed. Okay, so that's the shed as it stands today. It has moved on a bit, and it is constantly evolving. The beauty of having everything on casters is that I can keep moving stuff around. The downside is obviously the shed is too small, and I did contemplate quite seriously a couple of weeks ago seeing if I could get permission to move it up to the patio at the top, which would have basically meant building a new shed, and that would have given me another 300 to 400 mil wide and long, and that was the sort of state that I was in, that I was contemplating completely building a new shed just to get another foot on either way round. But having had this tidy up and rearrange, I'm happy now that I've got the room that I can reasonably want, because I know what would happen if I moved with a new shed. Not only would it take 18 months to do, in 6 months' time it would be the same as this was, cluttered up to the ceiling. So I think it's just a matter of being orderly, putting things away, having proper storage for everything, rather than just putting it on a bench because you haven't got anywhere for it to go. Find somewhere for it to go, or lose something that you don't use. So I hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next time. We'll be doing something different in the shed. Now we've got room to. I'll see you then. Bye!